Joining us from London is Elisabeth Brown, a senior fellow with the Atlantic Council's Transatlantic Security Initiative. Hello to you, and thank you for speaking to Paris Direct. So in that report, we heard the contrasting tones from JD Vance last year and Marco Rubio this year. What is the reason behind that sort of, I guess you could call it, a softening of the tone?
The first reason is that these are two different people who are also competitors within the Trump administration. JD Vance very much standing for a combative, isolationist wing of the Trump administration, and Marco Rubio is more of the transatlanticist. He hasn't been heard very much from him in the past year, but now he clearly felt it was his turn to speak, and he tried to bring a bit of that more traditional Republican mindset back. And we should also remember that ordinarily this would not have been seen as any sort of well, it would still be a significant speech under ordinary circumstances, but now it was extremely warmly received simply because it was not this kind of speech JD Vance gave. So that just illustrates how expectations and mindsets have shifted in Europe since that speech by JD Vance a year ago, and indeed throughout this year of the second Trump administration.
Right, and that's what's really hard to pin down with the Trump administration, is that when he returned to the White House last January, we anticipated this isolationist foreign policy, not getting involved in conflicts overseas, especially in the Middle East. So how have things changed in foreign policy over the past 12 months?
They changed dramatically. So, that has surprised both America's allies and Trump's base at home, because everybody expected an isolationist foreign policy where the Trump administration would focus on domestic issues first. And instead, what we have seen is a very activist and turbulent foreign policy. We have seen the seizure of President Maduro of Venezuela. We have seen Greenland, which was mentioned in the introduction to this segment. We have seen attacks on Iran, and there may still be yet another attack on Iran. So all of that, all these things, all these steps are quite surprising, considering what Trump had promised in his election campaign, and so it has taken the world by surprise and caused the world, including most importantly America's allies, to reassess their relationship with the United States, which is exactly what Friedrich Merz, the German chancellor, articulated in his speech yesterday.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if Europe and America are equals in that relationship. One of the headline quotes that Rubio delivered today in Munich was that the U.S. doesn't seek to separate, but to revitalize its old friendship with Europe. If I'm going to play armchair psychologist here, Elisabeth, a lot of finger pointing is usually done before their self-examination. So Europeans agree to ramp up spending, to rely less on the U.S., but is Washington going to make any concessions here?
It's unlikely, because the United States is an extremely powerful country, the most powerful country on the planet, perhaps with China a close second. But the paradoxical outcome of the actions we have seen in the past year, including actions directed squarely against some of America's closest allies, have had the effect, or the paradoxical result of that is that, yes, European countries have vowed to increase defense expenditure, but that also makes them less dependent on the United States. And where the United States has benefited so enormously over the past decades is that it has always had a group of friends, a group of nations who have been willing to back it up, rain or shine, under any circumstances. And now these countries are saying, well, this is a new day. America has signaled that it's not always going to be our friend, and we will increase our capabilities. So yes, they're spending more on defense, but that also means more independence from the United States.
After Rubio spoke, we also heard he questioned Russia's resolve to end the war in Ukraine. Since then, we also heard from the Ukrainian president, who said that European unity is the best defense against Russian aggression. How strong is that European unity right now?
It is surprisingly strong. It has been the 4 years since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine have been incredibly difficult for European countries and, of course, for Ukraine. But it has been a massive challenge for European countries to be united and to show unity when they have had to make sacrifices to a different extent. Some have had to make very major sacrifices, some not so much. And if you don't have to make major sacrifices, then it's very easy to say you are going to oppose Russia's invasion of Ukraine, you're going to support Ukraine. But even so, despite these differences, the European countries, so the EU and a few countries that are not in the EU, so Switzerland, the UK, and so forth, Norway, have managed to cobble together this unity. And that unity was on display earlier this year when the United States said it was going to take Greenland, if necessary, by military force. Then these countries once again had to display and prove they were united. And that's what they did. That is incredible, really, considering that so many different interests are represented within this group of European nations. And that bodes well for the future, because the future is going to be even more turbulent than it is now.
Yeah, and just before we came on air at the top of the hour, Volodymyr Zelensky said, give Ukraine 2 months of a ceasefire and they will hold elections. How significant is that, and how will that impact negotiations?
This is a promise that it has been reported President Zelensky had to give to the United States. It was the result of U.S. pressure on Ukraine. The Americans wanted the Ukrainians to hold these elections. And if I were to guess, the Ukrainians would not have wanted to hold these elections in April or May, which is the predicted timeline, simply because it's incredibly difficult to hold elections in a country that is at war, even if there happens to be a ceasefire at the point when those elections are held. But we should remember, Ukrainian territory is still held by the Russians. Other parts, large parts of the rest of Ukraine are ravaged by war. How are you going to hold elections under such circumstances? But that was part of what the Ukrainians had to promise the Americans, and clearly they didn't have much of a choice, since the US is the deciding force in these peace talks with the Russians and the Ukrainians.
One final question for you. We also heard from British Prime Minister Keir Starmer. He announced that the UK would be sending a carrier strike group to the North Atlantic and the High North this year, the US, Canada, and other NATO allies taking part. What's the point of that operation? Is it a show of force, or what do we make of it?
It is the UK showing that it can do its part for NATO and for its closest friends within NATO. As we all know, the Trump administration and Donald Trump himself have been saying now for years that the Europeans are not doing enough. And now the UK is clearly saying to the world, but especially in the direction of Washington, we are quite significant military power. We can step in, and it just so happens that it has the capability to do so just when it's needed. And the UK really matters, because it is a significant military power, more significant than perhaps its population size would suggest. That's why we will see the UK play, I think, an even more significant role within NATO in the coming months and years, because it is the obvious candidate to take more responsibility.
All right, Elisabeth, thank you so much for your time. Elisabeth Brown joining us from London. Thank you.